Thanks for watching this portion of Garage Logic today on our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. And also thanks to our friends at Everest Men's Health for sponsoring this. Go to everestmenshealth.com today to see if they can help you with better energy and better health. And catch the Garage Logic podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Years ago.
The important day that Luke Becker was referring to, of course, was December 7th, 1941. That was a Saturday 80 years ago today. I'm sorry, it was a Sunday 80 years ago today, and the harbor was attacked at Hawaiian time at about 7:40 a.m. Thereabouts, which would have been 20 minutes to 1 in the Twin Cities or in Minnesota. And you can imagine what life was like. You know, it was a Sunday. People came home from church and had the Sunday meal going. It was getting close to Christmas. There were probably 17 and 18-year-olds out in the backyard playing touch football, and I don't know how quickly Americans learned of it. It would have been by radio. You would think that, I would think that by mid-afternoon to late afternoon, it certainly had to be on the radio.
Yeah.
And to think what these kids must have known, well, I guess I know. My dad would have been 24. He knew where he was headed.
Yeah.
And his brother was either 25 or 26. He went into the Navy. My dad went into the Army. And you can imagine what that day must have been like when people heard about this, because they might not have known, are we going to get attacked? You know, is Minneapolis, St. Paul going to get attacked? And that did not come to fruition. I've got a number of notes. Dave Bliss, writing from Bulgaria. In yesterday's podcast, you referenced the classic Christmas movie, White Christmas. You mentioned about how the four main characters went to Vermont to do a performance and found, to their surprise, no snow. Full disclosure at this point, I have not listened to the whole show yet, so it is possible Mr. FYI has already corrected you. But in case he has not, I felt it my great responsibility to point out that they did not, in fact, go to Vermont with the intent of doing a performance. They were performers that went to Vermont for vacation. While there, they quickly came to realize that the resort owner was the old general of Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye's characters from World War II. It is only after they discovered the general's business was going under that they gathered their fellow soldiers from around the country to come to a performance they put on to help save the general's business. Unlike what most entertainers might do in this position, Crosby's character even went so far as to refuse to have the show broadcast, as he did not want to make this effort to help their old commander into a cheap PR stunt. The movie presents a great message about honoring those who served in combat. I'm sure it struck a chord in the hearts of its original 1954 viewers, many of whom would have been on the battlefield themselves just a decade or so earlier. By the way, there is a comical scene in the movie where Danny and Bing dress up as women and perform a number that their co-stars, Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen, had performed in a previous scene. I have it on good authority, my rarely wrong sister-in-law, that this scene was not part of the original script. Bing and Danny were just messing around on the set one day, dressed up like ladies and lip-syncing to the song. The bit was such a hit they decided to put it in the final cut. Merry Christmas from Bulgaria, where we have unseasonably early snow and seem to be on our way to a white Christmas ourselves. More proof of absolutely nothing. David Bliss.
Why were they goofing around dressed up as women?
I don't know.
Oh, you know. Was it the weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe, my dad was a World War II Navy vet, so I grew up knowing what December 7th was in our history. Dad was not in the Navy at the time of the bombing, but served later on a destroyer in the Pacific. In 2009, he was part of an honor flight group visiting Washington. When at World War II Memorial, Bob Dole came to greet his group, making the rounds and shaking each vet's hand and thanking them for their service. I got a picture back home of Dad and Bob Dole shaking left hands. Dad was a natural lefty, so it seemed pretty easy for him. The look on their faces showed the mutual respect they had for one another. The irony was that one was a lifelong Democrat and the other a lifelong Republican. I think there's a lesson there for all of us. My dad passed in 2018, and I like to think maybe he and Bob may be reenacting that handshake again today. Sent from our winter retreat in Orange Beach, Alabama. 75 here today. A bit cooler than you are. Doug the Barber writes that. Thank you, Doug. And I got a great note from Bill Stein, who writes, today we celebrate the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. I will, of course, remember our great friend Paul Filer, a veteran of the attack. who we've had on the show before Paul died. I will sound his bosun's pipe and read from his pocket Catholic devotional that he received from his aunt on his first communion. He carried it with him all through the war. I will bring communion to his lovely wife, Vel, at her lake home, where she still lives on her own at 92 and as sharp as they come. Terry and I, that's Bill's wife, enjoy visiting her every Sunday. Good luck and God's blessing on this sacred day, Bill Stein. That's a great memory of Paul Filer, who we had on one day years ago to sing Danny Boy. You recall that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Paul Filer.
I-
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I did do a little research on, we wanted to know how fast people learned about it.
Right.
We thought it was 12:55 our time, correct, that the attack basically started?
No, a little earlier. A little earlier.
Earlier than that. Okay.
12:40, 12:38.
12:40, okay. Some first bulletins went out on the radio at, I'll do all of these in Central Time, 1:22, but they were very sketchy.
Right.
Just
Right.
that there was an attack. Then there were radio broadcasts of football games that day that started mentioning that there was something going on at Pearl Harbor they didn't know. And it was at 2:18 our time where somebody from Mr. Roosevelt, President Roosevelt's team, went into the press room and said, yes, there's been an attack. And that started going out on the radio at that point. And then at 3:10 our time during the Jack Benny show, they cut in to start talking about the attack on the radio.
Think of the 18-year-olds at the dinner table that afternoon. They knew exactly what was in store for them because the country was terribly united and terribly shocked by this. Terribly shocked. And they knew instantly, man, we'll all be doing something about this.
But-
We'll all be doing something.
From what I read, FDR at the time was really trying to inspire the country and the politicians to get involved with World War II, but we weren't, as a country, united on that notion until
This did it.
until Pearl Harbor, and then we were all in.
It was a bunch of guys from St. Paul who fired the first shot, too, from the USS Ward, which was just outside the harbor, the USS Ward. It brought the country together, and we all wonder, will that ever happen again? And we don't know.
I don't think it will.
Look at the respect Bob Dole had for George H.W. Bush. Mm-hmm. They were fighting comrades. They both served in World War II.
My grandpa was angry his whole life that he couldn't go, Joe, because of his hernia, and he ended up moving down to Minneapolis and building gliders. Evidently, we built gliders at the base there, where the airport is now, and that's what he did for World War II.
Well, it was here where George H.W. learned to fly.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But it was such a big deal that my point is guys that wanted to go weren't let in for various medical reasons and then carried that guilt around with them for the rest of their lives.
Do you know that attack probably could not happen today, December
No.
7th, 2021? Steve Letting is letting me know that there's a blizzard warning in effect for Hawaii's Big Island. The forecaster's warning that up to 8 inches of snow is possible. The warning in effect through 6 a.m. local time for the mountain region said that travel should be restricted to emergencies only. Blowing snow will significantly reduce visibility at times with periods of zero visibility, according to the National Weather Service. In addition to 8 inches of snow potentially being dumped on the region, there may also be winds of up to 125 miles per hour. Blizzard warnings for Hawaii are rare, but not unheard of in the tropical destination. The last blizzard warning issued by the National Weather Service in Hawaii was more than 3.5 years ago. The Big Island has summits that reach heights of nearly 14,000 feet. So snow is not unheard
And that's
of.
where the snow is going to be, right? It's going to be up at elevation.
Right, but with 125 mile an hour winds, do you think with the technology of 1941, you would have launched an attack?
Probably not.
No. What a day, huh? I wasn't here yet. Not
So
that
you
old.
say.
Yeah.
So you say.
Close though, huh?
And I've told you guys many times, I was tardy. I was tardy in grilling my own father about World War II. I was just tardy about it. He was 24. He knew instantly, I bet.
That he was going.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a picture of him in his uniform, kind of waving goodbye.
Wow.
I think that whole generation, though, I didn't say one word to my uncles or father about World War II, and they all served.
Was it a thing where they just really didn't want to talk about it?
I don't know.
Just different cats. They
Yeah.
did what they had to do. They weren't looking for
Attention.
They weren't looking for anything. This is what they had to be done.
Completely different mindset.
It's exactly the way I would have been, probably.
Really?
I'm kidding.
So your father flew around the jet fuel. We all knew that.
Yeah.
But you said he was in charge of navigation.
Yeah. He was
Wow.
a navigator on planes that flew barrels of gasoline through the Himalayas
And you crossed the river twice.
to get to a hockey game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'd never grilled my uncle who was in the Navy, who became a doctor. He was on a ship the whole time. And my uncles, my mom's brothers, months would go by without my grandmother hearing from them and not knowing what their fate was.
Yeah.
But that's common. That was common to all Americans. All Americans. Which is why I think that Sunday afternoon dinner on December 7, 1941 must have been really, really sobering. Must have been really
Sure.
quiet.
Yeah.
As parents looked at their kids and thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
80 years.
My sort of a side note, my mother absolutely hated the Christmas song, I'll Be Home for Christmas, because she said all it reminded her of was World War II. Nobody knew where their family members were when they were fighting, and you won't be home for Christmas one way or the other. Absolutely hated it.
Right. Well, I don't blame her.